Like Joshua, did you saw the article obviously,
Oh yeah, I did.
the mesh network in Nigeria?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That just goes to tell you, like, I mean, people are man, people are exploring and looking out for new solutions and new ways to actually scale up. And I was surprised, but then again, I wasn't really surprised. You understand? Like, I
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
it's a problem, so people look out for ways to bypass it. So, but when I saw it, I was kind of like, okay, good. Nigerians are thinking. Thank God we're thinking in this direction.
Mhm.
And to see someone, in the country embracing it is just awesome. Really awesome.
All right, cool. All right, well, it's 7 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the AfroFinLab podcast, members of the decentralized movement. Today we have myself, Tashoma Bellini, James Dante, Joshua Akpan, and our lovely new guest, Mercy. She'll be here with DC, who will pop up later, and we've got Sydney. We're going to try to keep the episodes down to 45 minutes because we've received feedback that we tend to kind of go off topic and come back. So yeah, we'll keep it short for you.
Us? That's not us. No.
Yeah.
3-hour
topic. All right. Well, we may as well start with this guest question, as we're recording. So this actually came from Charlene Lemard, my sister, my big sister, and she came to me like, why would I invest in crypto if I can't even buy a house or a car with it? Guys, forgive me. I've been talking to my sister about crypto for the past like 6 years, and she still doesn't quite get it. So have some patience. I'm sure there's like other listeners who have the same type of questions. And what is the use of crypto? Like, what can you buy with it? Who wants to start first on that?
Use of the use of. Can you just repeat the question again? Sorry, I was talking to DC.
So the question is, why should one invest in crypto if they can't even buy a house or a car with it?
Well, first of all, I mean, if you invested in 2010, 2009, even in 2013, you definitely would be able to buy a car, except you're saying specifically with currency. Well, you can actually gateways that allows you to buy, make payments with crypto. So I don't see any reason why you can buy stuff. You can actually use to make payments for stuff with your ADA. So yeah, you can actually buy stuff.
Hey, we got Dwayne in the room. How's it going, Dwayne?
ADC.
What's going on? Good evening. How's everyone?
Hey, DC.
Good.
What's going on, Josh? Hi, Mercy.
Hey.
All is well. Sorry, I didn't want to cut the conversation. Have we started?
Yeah, we started. We may as well have you jump in as well. So we're just answering a guest question. So why invest in crypto if you can't even buy a house with it, or you can't buy a car with it?
Yeah. Are you asking?
I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's honestly like, it's super important to understand, what you're buying and what you're investing in, right? And I think that, first of all, like crypto in 2017, which is like the ICO hype that everybody thinks of, versus crypto now is like night and day different, right? So you got to realize that, like, it's the maturity. Like we've grown up a lot in that sense. I think now, the same reason you buy crypto is the same reason you buy a fixed income financial product, right? You're going to get X amount, every so often, whether it's every month or every quarter, right? The way some people hold stocks that just give dividend and they just live off the dividend, right? They don't actually sell the shares of the stock. They just hold it as their investment, say in Apple or Microsoft or any tech company, right? And they know that each quarter they're going to get some sort of dividend and be able to like live daily off of that money. So for me, it's the same thing with especially with ADA now, we're all receiving staking rewards, and, it's one of those things where, 5 to 6, 7% interest, like you don't even find that, without significant risk and costs in the traditional finance market. So to me, that just for pressing buttons and helping secure the network and help decentralize the network, like that's an investment that is always going to give you what I call just rights to the cash flow, right? So anytime I think about an investment, I think, you know, what are the cash flows? What's the net positive value right now? Meaning, am I going to be in the red, or am I going to be actually in the black because I'm making money off of this and I'm receiving income from it? So to me, crypto just provides that, at least if you're in a proof of stake crypto, right? Where you're staking and you're earning. Bitcoin, not so much, right? Like the only thing that is attractive about Bitcoin is like, it's the same thing that people are attracted to for gold or for collectibles or art, right? There's this idea of scarcity. So you got the scarcity play, and you have this kind of unseizable, unstoppable, you know, gold, e-gold type of money. But you don't actually, like everyday people like you and I who hold Bitcoin, we don't actually receive cash flow, right? Like we don't secure the network. We're not the miners of it. So it's very different when you're talking about proof of stake, where the stakers, you know, essentially become the de facto miners and owners of the system, versus something like Bitcoin, where truly it's like a very centralized, you know, high class of people, mostly located in rural China, who have, you know, access to really low cost energy, and the ability to mine it, and they get the cash flow. But that's how I think about it.
So there's this investment piece. And before we go further, we should probably recognize, speaking of staking rewards, somebody had some big news today, right?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Josh, what do you got for us?
So, big announcement, guys. Zoe Pool just minted its first block today. So,
big up Zoe.
Congratulations.
Wait. So what does that mean? What does that mean for the listeners that don't know what that means?
Yeah.
That means Zoe Pool just made the Cardano network even more secure by minting a block. And that means more profit for delegators of Zoe Pool, in simple terms.
Hey, so
yeah. To add to that question, I mean, that question you asked, if you are in a proof of stake community, and you're supporting a proof of stake project like Cardano, with your stake you can earn more rewards and like passive income basically. So this is part of the reason you probably consider, you know, staking your crypto, especially.
Yeah. So I think it's good to just include a bit of context. So I've been talking to my sister about crypto, you know, since like 2012 or something, right? She works in banking. Now, I think the reason she asked that question is because maybe she's still in the kind of like old mentality that we used to have in the crypto space, that cryptocurrencies are here to replace fiat currencies. You know, and that was kind of like the big idea, like, you know, we're going to move completely away from fiat currencies and start to use decentralized deflationary currencies to replace our inflationary fake fiat currencies, right? It seems like the agenda is kind of changed now. Now in the crypto world, we have this idea of they can kind of live together side by side. In fact, one could be seen as like the counterweight to the other, right? So if your government is, you know, printing too much fiat currency like they currently are, you can kind of hedge your risk by investing in a deflationary cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, or even better, you can invest in a deflationary cryptocurrency that also has staking on top of it, like Cardano. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Charlie.
I just want to add that you know, this question is probably a follow-up to what we were discussing last week. You know, what DC was calling money in, money out. Is it cash in, cash out? Because I think that, you know, once your sister cannot really, you know, somehow, you know, take crypto to the dealership or to a realtor and say that, okay, I'm ready to buy a car, you know, so this is my crypto, let's buy the car. You know, once we haven't got to that point yet, you know, the average person, or the person who hasn't really looked into the science of crypto, would say that, oh, you know what, I can't buy right now, I can't buy a house with it, I can't buy anything with it, because you know, we haven't got there yet. And I think that well, we're going there, we're on our way there, but for now, you know, it's understandable that that somebody would say that I can't use crypto to buy
But
a
can you
car or
use Apple stocks to buy a car or a
That's
house?
all right.
You know what I mean? You have
Okay.
to exchange it for cash to be able to do it, and then you have to pay capital gains as well.
Yeah,
So
the word cryptocurrency, it does us a disservice. I mean, first of all, because just the crypto part freaks people out a little bit, but then the currency part is a little bit misleading. I've really been enjoying using the words platform and operating system more lately, right? Like when you hear us talk about a financial operating system, that feels more evocative and true to me. You know, and now what are we going to build on it now that we got it?
And Bitcoin is a little different, right? So Bitcoin is like, that's its application. It is a currency as well as some other blockchain applications. But I know when I explain it sometimes, it's like Microsoft Windows. You have your operating system, and then you can build different applications on top of your operating system. And it just so happens that Bitcoin, its application is as a currency. Which is a lot different than what we're dealing with ADA, which is a utility for a way for you to interact with the Cardano blockchain.
So should we just completely like move on from the idea of cryptocurrencies being there to replace fiat currencies, or now is it just a platform for financial services on top of it?
Oh, yeah, I think, you know, to James and to Sydney's points, one of the hardest concepts of teaching people crypto is like, first of all, it's not a currency, right? These things are going to go up 5x and go back down 50% in a single day, right? So that's way too volatile to ever be a currency, both on the upside, making money, and on the downside. So we have to keep that in mind. This concept of stable money, though, is huge, and it might truly be the first killer use case of crypto. Think about it. Anyone can now go long or short the US dollar, right? No matter where they live, just with an internet connection. The idea of capital controls no longer exists, right? The idea that a government can say who and can't hold the US dollar and can actually control the currency in a way that we see a lot of like pretty, you know, oppressive governments try to do, basically, they just cannot. The blockchain as a technology fundamentally changes the ability of the government to control who has access to the money they print from now on. So that as a concept is going to take some time to I think settle, but I think what will be built on top of stable US dollar. The US dollar, to be honest, is not that stable. Like when you look at the amount of money printing that's happening in 2020, like you hear Powell and the Fed speak last week about how 2.5% inflation is going to be the new norm, when, you know, this time last year would have been crazy to hear something like that. Anything above 2 would have been disastrous, right? But this idea of, you know, a federally controlled fiat money, it can actually coincide with crypto because like Sydney said, right? Cardano is an operating system. It's a financial and a social operating system. What the gas to use the platforms built on Cardano is, that's ADA, right? That's Lovelaces, right? Lovelaces, for those who don't know, is the subunit of ADA. You have the US dollar and you have cents. We have ADA and Lovelaces. And Ada Lovelace herself is, you know, widely considered the first computer scientist ever. And that's where the name came from. But this concept, you know, of crypto being either investment, you know, commodity, what is it? It's actually a little bit of all of them, right? You can think of how Bitcoin is already a commodity, just similar to gold, right? You can think of how it's also a deflationary asset, which makes it scarce and kind of some sort of like an investment, like a collectible or a digital art piece or gold.
And store of value.
Right? And a store of value, right? But all those things, right, don't subtract from the fact that, you know, Ethereum takes that Bitcoin model and then puts programmable money on top of it to make it a true utility, right? So can you say that Ethereum is the same exact thing as Bitcoin? Like, not really, right? Because you can do things on Ethereum that you'll never be able to do really on Bitcoin because of the limitations of their scripting language. The same goes for Cardano. Cardano is much more similar to Ethereum, and even, you know, you could argue potentially more powerful in its final form than what Ethereum can do now. So it's even more of a programmable money type that's also this commodity that's used to pay for services on the platform, right? So I think we have to think of it as like this kind of commodity asset currency type of deal, realizing that not only is it that, but you can build stable currencies on top of Cardano, kind of like what we see with DAI on top of Ethereum, right? And then you can build, you know, entire platforms and apps on top of just having stable money. So I think that concept's going to take some time, but it's powerful in my opinion.
And you know, I agree with you. I think what's already starting to happen though, even with DeFi in the Ethereum ecosystem, is you don't have to know what's happening under the hood, right? So if I own, you know, a group of currencies or tokens that work on a DeFi platform, all I have to do is use that DeFi platform as my wallet. And by using that DeFi platform as my wallet, or just putting those tokens into that DeFi platform, I'm going to earn interest off of it. And I have no idea how it works. You know what I mean? So, you know, at the end of the day, and I've had this conversation with a few people, but I do think that like the next evolution or phase of blockchain or cryptocurrency is definitely going to be the user interface, because we don't want people knowing how things work under the hood. We just want them using it and it working the way that they you know, want it to work.
I was talking to a friend about this.
Go ahead, James.
I mean, he's used to like trading stocks online. He gets this idea that he can go to a website and get stocks, and his question is, you know, what's the difference between cryptocurrency and that? It feels the same. So I think a big part of what we're talking about is that, hey, all these things we interact with through a computer screen, to a certain segment of the population, it just feels like the same thing, right? Either way, you're interacting with magic code. Right? And so for us, the task is to distinguish in a meaningful way between Bitcoin and Ethereum and Cardano and stocks and other things that I can change my relationship with through a screen. And yeah, UX UI plays a role in that, right? Giving people some way to do it. But DC, you also snuck in this phrase, social operating system. That's a really provocative phrase, right? This idea that somehow what Cardano is building is going to create relationships, give people a chance to kind of collaborate in different ways or do new things.
Totally. Yeah. I think I've always considered it, you know, a dual play at both, you know, finance, legacy finance. So I call that CFI and DeFi, right? Decentralized finance. Like that's just low hanging fruit in my opinion. And I'm glad that, you know, after 3 years, Ethereum kind of really took hold on that, but that is blockchain out of the box. I think when it gets really interesting is when you attach on-chain identities with things like ZK snarks, right? So you have, and you know, IOHK has already created Sonic, which is their version of a ZK snark. You tack that on to something like a Tala Prism, which is a product that they have, a decentralized ID product. Now you're talking about building a social network of people who can not only maintain their privacy, they can directly attest and prove on chain that they are who they say they are with the information that only they could have and possess, right? So you talk about, you know, social operating system. What does that look like, right? That looks like instead of trading stocks, right, we go to data exchanges now. We trade our data to these large monoliths that currently, you know, buy it up at the lowest price, right? To me, and I've said this before, I think that's the first, you know, first generalized form of UBI that we'll see will be the sale of personal data across these blockchain rails, right? And to do that, you need some sort of like social system that actually is powerful enough that governments trust and believe in enough that says, hey, Dwayne Cameron's Altala ID is actually Dwayne Cameron. Like the process that he had to go through to establish that, like, right, reaching out to my university, my professional contacts, right? Even my health records could potentially be tied to Altala Prism if ZK snarks and privacy is done the right way, which I think it can be, right?
Sorry, could you just explain what ZK snarks are?
Sure, yeah. ZK snarks, zero knowledge snarks are basically a way to preserve privacy, but also send a message through blockchain that attests to basically a certain piece of information. So let's say that I'll give you an example, right? Let's say I'm applying for a job and I want to use my Altala Prism to show them that I went to this university and I graduated top of my class, right? If I have a ZK snark attached to that, basically built into that Altala Prism application,
identity system.
I don't actually have to tell the company that I'm actually trying to apply to anything other than the fact that this university attests to the fact that I graduated at the top of my class. Like they don't have to see any other information beyond that And the thing about ZK Snarks is it's a proof and it's small and it can scale really well. So you actually get privacy and scalability with the idea of ZK Snarks. But what it really is it's a play at privacy, right? So you can attest to something in like the most trustless manner without giving out any other basically data about yourself that's linked to that Atala Prism ID. So it's a play at privacy and scalability that pretty much all blockchains will move to. You know, you already see IOHK doing things like Sonic. ZK Snarks have already been implemented in some like rudimentary scale on Ethereum today. So it's not like it's like, you know, this research that's 5-10 years out. It's kind of here now. It's more like finding useful apps to build it on top of. I think that will be the key for ZKs, but yeah.
So I think this nicely segues into the next portion of the show, where we'll be talking about Project Catalyst and what you guys are working on. So firstly, could we just like explain what Project Catalyst is, just so everyone's clear? James,
Sure.
DC? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting other way to look at the social operating system piece, right? Like we're building ways for people to interact in a trustless world and at scale. But we also have these kind of moment-to-moment interactions, right? And these opportunities to meet people. I mean, first of all, the 6 of us are sitting here right now, right? And Sydney, it kind of takes me back to the first conversation we had. You know, as we were beginning to get to know each other, Sydney said, you know, we can all have our own projects and begin supporting each other. And then we realized that we were having a pretty good time, so we might as well start working together.
Right.
But it's a similar thing going on with Catalyst right now. So we're rolling out governance in the Cardano ecosystem presently. And just like they did with the Shelley testnet, they're taking a really intentional approach to trying some things, running some experiments with small groups of people. And so actually 4 of us on this call, right? Josh, Mercy, DC, and myself are all part of this 50-person cohort in Project Catalyst, where we've been invited to propose ideas, network with each other, provide feedback on each other's ideas, and, you know, simulate a funding round. I think one of the beautiful tweaks that IOHK has made here is that there is no actual funding here, because any number of things could go wrong, right? So we've had this chance to practice proposing ideas and building stuff together. And I think it's going somewhere pretty exciting to judge by the last few days of conversations we've all been having.
So you're saying this is like a simulation or a future governance system where we can all vote and decide where the funds are going to be allocated on different projects, right? Is this something? Is this something that you know, once it's done, we'll be able to extend to our own project, like AfroFinLab or something?
Mercy, you got some news for us?
Sorry, say that again. News?
No, news about you've been putting in the hours on our application, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I'll just pick off from James, you know, what you said and what Teshoma said in terms of assimilation, and then just continue from there and see how our project hopefully will fit in. So, you know, in addition to everything that James said, what we need to remember is that, yes, it's a simulation, and what's going to happen is that when it becomes real, it's going to be a 6-week cycle. So every 6 weeks, the Cardano ecosystem, everybody, community, you know, there is a governance to that, but there will be voting. There will be people who will be proposing ideas. There will be people who will be helping with, you know, drawing up the proposals in a way that it can be voted on. And, you know, for this round, you know, as we've said, there is not any money with that, but it's been a really, really good trial run in terms of not only are we trying to propose ideas, we're also trying to figure out, okay, so how would this governance actually work? And yeah, there has been some really, really interesting discussions. So for sure, we are not getting any money this round, but it's good for us to put something in, because then, you know, it gets eyeballs and it gets refined, and hopefully, you know, once we get onto the real run, we more or less know how it is actually done. So yes, we did put in a proposal for this podcast. Hopefully, you know, we could end up getting something, you know, to make this a little bit more professional, you know, get to pay people like the Shoma for for hosting the podcast and
Right. For his
Yeah.
artistic skill set.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a simulation, but it feels kind of real, because how those ideas and, you know, structure it in a more professional, should I full way, based off of the feedback we get. You know, the whole Project Catalyst process is, you know, is just to allow, you know, the community, which is awesome, to actually create proposals, vote on them, and then, you know, fund these proposals, all for, you know, just to sustain and make sure like Cardano is going in the right direction, and to sustain Cardano in long term. So for me, my experience has been like awesome, because I thought I had everything figured out, right? And then now I'm getting feedbacks from everybody, and, you know, we're all just working together, you know, just to make sure we have like the best and more consolidated idea for, you know, the final stage. And I know for some people at the beginning, it was like a bummer for people like, you know, don't want to call me, but some guys didn't really like, you know, the fact that we weren't getting paid like the actual ADA. It was a simulation. I didn't expect that, but I probably didn't read the description. But, you know, but then the whole value that we're getting out from this Project Catalyst is just invaluable, so to say. Because, you know, we're getting support, we're getting people understanding our ideas and helping us develop it more, not, you know, turning it down completely. You know, just ensuring that we come out with the best possible project, not because we want money, but because this is what the community needs. This is what this project needs to thrive to the next level. And, you know, just to be part of that, to be in that focus group with all, and smart people and people that actually care about Cardano, it's just like a blessing to me, actually. And also having the opportunity to actually, you know, put my idea out there and see what people think about it.
So, Sydney, I hope you're part of the next 6-week cycle. You guys got to jump in with us.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah,
that's a no-brainer for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing AfroFinLab. We're looking to submit that. I'll probably submit something on DeFi Babylon. Guys, could you just tell us a bit more about your Catalyst projects? Like, I know everyone's working on something different, as well as AfroFinLab. So, James, would you like to start with project maybe?
Sure. Well, yeah, before we go into specifics about the project, I want to reiterate what Josh was saying about just what it's been like to meet people. First of all, so for this trial run, it has exceeded my highest hopes about what it would feel like to be meeting other people, sharing ideas, supporting each other to really push those ideas to be as good as they can be. But in a much more practical sense, I'm meeting people who can do things that I can't, right? I had a colleague in the project today read through my proposal, and, you know, she has this business background that allows her to look at my proposal and say, hey, like I would not say these ideas in this way, try to be more positive. I would reorder your ideas in this way so that, you know, somebody who's skimming can make more sense of it more quickly. All these things that are beyond my expertise to think in those terms. And that's just one example. And hi, Julie, today for that, and thanks for that help today if you're watching. But you know, and DC, that's how we met. That's how we met Mercy, and you have all of these people bringing things to the table that each other don't have, and therefore building these teams. And that's only going to become a bigger deal. And I just hope that once there's real money on the table, we can kind of keep that spirit strong and really recognize this as a positive sum game where the better our ideas get, the better it is for everybody. So all of that to say, I'm submitting a proposal for Workshop Maybe here in Massachusetts. I'm hoping to establish the idea to the point where during the first official round of funding, that it can support, you know, some of my development time on what I'm trying to build. But I think even more importantly, I'd like to pass the ball to Dwayne and kind of give you a chance to talk about how you've been putting some pieces together, because I had a hard time writing my proposal today because it's changed so much, because I see it in relation to other projects that are being written right now, if that makes sense.
You guys put it great. You know, just before I get into my specific, you know, proposals, the whole Project Catalyst like idea to bring together, you know, all these community members from around the globe, like it's been amazing. Like, first of all, there's brilliant people in this ecosystem, like here today. Like you don't see them on Twitter, right? And you might not hear about them on Reddit, but like there's some very smart people on the developer side, and like James said, on the business side as well. So like Cardano is in good hands when you talk about like, you know, IOHK, Cardano Foundation, Emergo, handing this thing off to the community, right? So that's point one. Point two, like Josh brought up, right? Like we've seen kind of what happens when the idea of money that's voted on by a community in this kind of pot that no one controls. I call it the VC in the sky, right? It's like this venture capital fund that just sits up there, and everyone who holds ADA just votes yay or nay on these different proposals, right? Based on the merit, based on if they think it's going to provide value. We have this idea, we don't think about ROI, we think about return on intention instead of return on investment, right? So the real idea here is this, like James said, this is a positive sum game, right? Like the best projects are going to basically take Cardano more and more into the mainstream, right? Because the best projects will create the services and the products that we use on Cardano, right? Like that's what drives adoption. So in many ways, this truly feels like one big team, even though we're all vying for different proposals that have, you know, different costs and budgets attached to them. I want to see the best proposal like get that funding, even if it's not mine, right? And that's kind of like the key point here. And Cardano and crypto in general does a really good job of aligning incentives. And I always say, you know, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome, because it is the most important part and the stickiest part of this when you think about bootstrapping a platform in the place that Cardano is right now, right? We don't even have smart contracts on mainnet, maybe 2, maybe 3 months away from like full smart contract with all the developer tooling and all the nuts and bolts, right? Like that's still some time out. But yet here are all of these devs here now, right? Like they're learning Marlowe. The Haskell devs already know about Plutus, right? I've had conversations with them, and they want to, you know, make money building products and infrastructure for Cardano now. So there's that, you know, there's that drive that's always in the back of your mind, I guess. My specific proposals, just to speak on a few of them, one of them is kind of related to this whole DeFi, open finance movement, and kind of what I've been doing there is, you know, first there's products in DeFi that IOHK, Emergo, and Cardano Foundation are already working on, right? Like we heard about Oracle pools through the Emergo Ergo DeFi partnership this week, and that went live. So that's live on Ergo, and one day, you know, that's going to be live on Cardano, right? And probably not too far in the future. The same thing for stablecoins. We know that both in the Emergo side, they're working on a stablecoin, and IOHK has a whole team that's devoted to, you know, thinking about and working on DeFi and stablecoin like products, right? So I don't think that going after those things will be the highest pursuit, but I do think that, you know, things like DEXs, things like Cardano's version of Uniswap are pretty low level that, you know, the community can come up with, you know, a team of Haskell devs who may actually already have an application, whether it's an order book, whether it's, you know, an exchange. Like I actually found one Haskell dev who forked the London Stock Exchange, took their entire set system and wrote it in Haskell, right? Wow. And now I'm in conversations with him about what it looks like to port that application into Plutus so that it runs on Cardano, right? And now we're talking about, okay, now we have the London Stock Exchange equivalent running on Cardano rails. You know, we're ready to take this thing to Ethiopia we're ready to take this thing to Rwanda and sell them stock exchange as a service, right? As a part of the whole Atala, Prism, Trace, Scan product lineup, right? It's just one more thing that makes Cardano the #1 place that, you know, governments are going to top down look at and say, hey, this is the blockchain that actually out of the box services the needs that we have right now, right? So I think the DeFi, that proposal is big. I don't exactly like, it's not formalized to the point where, like, you know, I'm a consultant by day, so I have to submit these type of proposals, and I have to, you know, think deeply about, you know, what that person on the other side making that decision of funding really thinks about. And everything from budget to timeline, you know, acceptance criteria, all these things have to go into it. For me right now with the DeFi proposal, it's been more so kind of me reaching out to Haskell devs. Once I find a GitHub repo that I think in some way, shape, or form relates to a DeFi product that we need on Cardano, right? Whether it's something like the order book, you know, the London Stock Exchange application, there's been some quant finance tools, some order graph tools. I've reached out to all these devs and basically said, hey, there is a process to secure funding to create your already existing Haskell application on Cardano, Plutus, Rails, right? And, you know, most of these Haskell devs already know about Cardano, right? Mainly because IOHK hires so many Haskell devs and engineers, but also just because it's the only crypto right now that they're going to be able to, out of the box, you know, operate and deploy products on, right? These guys, like functional programmers, Haskell guys, like Plutus really is their dream. So they're already like interested in the product. They just need it to be at a point where they can take it and run with it, which we're so close to being there, but we're just not quite there yet. We have to, there's the patience that comes with that. But that DeFi proposal itself, it's coming along well, mainly because Haskell devs are reaching out and they're responding and they're interacting and they're actually engaged. When you talk about funding them, when you talk about paying them their hourly rate in ADA, like that actually excites them, right? So you have to think, you know, what is our high level goal? You know, I want to make sure that the devs in Africa learning Plutus and Marlowe, right, have just as much opportunity to submit these proposals, have just as much, you know, mainstream attention when they submit these proposals to the community as, you know, the devs in Europe and America and everywhere else around the world, right? Like that to me is decentralization and an open network, right? So that's the DeFi play. It really is thinking about like low level, like, you know, 2 to 4 months projects to even porting current existing Haskell applications into Plutus and then deploying them, thinking about things like Cardano's version of Uniswap or Cardano's version of any type of decentralized exchange, for instance. The other one that I came up with, and this is one that I actually am thinking really deeply about these days, is forking Gitcoin and actually deploying that on Cardano. And what that means is basically, and for those who don't know, Gitcoin is Twitter for Ethereum devs, basically. It's where they go to as not only like a social hub, but where they go to complete bounties and get paid, where they go to see like what ideas people are thinking about, hackathons, quests, so they have an education sector. So all these things that are super developer centric on Ethereum live in what's called Gitcoin for them, right? I think that as a product and as a service, that's huge, right? Having a place where all devs know that they can go for all things related to Cardano. I think that especially when you're talking about bootstrapping in these early days, that's pretty important. And, you know, my idea is Gitcoin Core, you know, it's entirely open source software, right? Like we can fork this thing tomorrow with, you know, the right couple Python, JavaScript, and Haskell devs. And in a few months, we can deploy this on Cardano and have the same exact, you know, developer hub exists for Plutus and Marlowe devs who are deploying smart contracts and dApps on Cardano. And not only them, but any project that builds on top of Cardano can also utilize the same exact platform and tap into the same developer network, right? So there's this idea of really trying to create a central hub. I think that right now I've seen a lot of proposals that are, you know, trying to create their own disparate hubs. So there's idea of like a developer entrepreneur marketplace. There's ideas surrounding, you know, virtual developer education platforms. My idea is saying, let's bring these all together into one, you know, central platform and really kind of drive that idea home, rather than having a bunch of different places that a developer would have to kind of go and look through and kind of search and find to really, you know, get to where they need to go on Cardano. I just want to make it super easy for devs. I think the easier you make it for them, you know, the more you'll see adoption and product usage, and more quickly too. So that's where we're at now. There's still a lot to come. I'm still working with IOHK to think about, can I get a few IOHK devs for the front end piece of it? Maybe not, they're pretty busy, right? But can I get some, IOHK strategic, guidance or at least consulting here? Thinking about, what Gitcoin currently has in their repo, what can we reuse? What do we need to rebuild totally on Haskell and Plutus Rails, right? So that's the conversation that I'm having right now with, some of the devs at IOHK and even some of those at Emergo. Still pretty early on in like ideation, but I think that this has legs in terms of bootstrapping developer adoption pretty early on the platform.
Can I just ask a question? So like moving forward, I mean, when we get to the next round of catalysts, etc., or even like a year from now, is IOHK still going to be like heavily involved in kind of like vetting projects or providing like developer assistance or any of that stuff?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, maybe as a very high level kind of, almost like strategic advisor, but not actually providing, input or devs to work on these. Like, those are the guys that are going to come from, Josh's Africa Training Development Center. And, those are the guys that are going to come from James's, workshop, maybe, who learn about Plutus, learn about Cardano as a platform, realize that they can make probably six-figure salaries if they just learn this programming language and then start deploying products that people actually want to use on top of it. I think that once you kind of hit home those incentives, and the Haskell devs, they get this, right? Because they're used to doing project bounties. They're used to, working for finance and banking institutions where they're building these type of order books and these type of products that run on top of exchanges. I think it's a new concept when you get into blockchain world. And when you start talking about, trying to bootstrap these applications on a network. But I do think the Haskell devs are already here and they really understand kind of the incentives behind Cardano. And I think we need to basically, echo that to all devs around the world. If you're a formal programmer, if you're a functional programmer, if you're an object-oriented guy, if you do .NET, whatever you do, right, you can earn a salary, right, working in some shape or form, developing products on Cardano. Like, to me, that's powerful in today's day and age. And I think that making that as simple and as easy as possible is kind of my driving, thesis behind this forking Gitcoin. I'm calling it Sitcoin for Cardano, right? I'm not tied to that name. We can call it anything, but I think it's a simple play on, Gitcoin on Cardano Rails, basically.
DC, so a quick question. I'm really excited about they forking the London Stock Exchange, right? Is there something about Haskell particularly that makes that more feasible or makes it safer, more or less? I mean, that could go spectacularly wrong, right?
Sure.
So my question is, what is it about Haskell that makes that possible?
Yeah, I mean, there's several things about Haskell, and I want to make it clear, right? I'm not a developer, so I'm not going to speak like one. I'm a consultant and more of a business analyst, but I do, work with these software devs every day for my day job, and I understand how they think in the developer lifecycle that they go through on projects, regardless of what they're programming in or even the application they're building, right? We can abstract away and just kind of talk about high level why the applications already built in Haskell will run very well in Cardano, right? And if we want to talk about why they built them in Haskell, if that's your question specifically, Mercy, I think that just the idea of functional programming has caught on really well in banks and finance institutions. Like when you look at Barclays, NASDAQ, S&P 500, right? Like big banks and stock exchanges, right? And just global markets trust the Haskell, the F sharps, the Erlangs of the world more than they trust code that compiles to JavaScript or Python, right?
Right.
There's just levels of assurance that are built in almost to the programming language itself that make it the default option when you're talking about building stock markets and high assurance code. NASA uses Haskell. NASA does not use JavaScript, right? And there's reasons for that. And it's the same exact concept behind the big banks, right? So anytime you find something like what I found, this Haskell application that's a forked version of the London Stock Exchange sets system, they're going to build it in Haskell because they know that the banks and the finance institutions they work for, they're way more likely to pick up that application and use forms of it than if they wrote it in JavaScript or something like that. Now, why Haskell works so well is because for Cardano specifically is because Plutus is just on-chain template Haskell and off-chain just pure Haskell, right? So Plutus is literally Haskell end-to-end in itself. And even more so, you can write your on-chain and off-chain code in the same environment. They can even share certain functions between them, which is something you totally don't get with Ethereum. It's almost like writing two different languages when you talk about the on-chain code that runs on the blockchain and the off-chain code, the business logic, the UI, the wallet front end that we interact with as end users of the application, right? In Cardano, they're both Haskell, and that's what actually makes developers who already wrote, order books or the London Stock Exchange fork, right? It makes porting that application into Plutus a lot easier than saying, hey, take this Python application that you wrote and then try to port that into Plutus for Cardano. Right. So that's the concept basically.
And I'd like to just kind of jump in there a little bit too. I'm not I've done a little bit of enough development to be dangerous. But it's proof, right? So if you have an application that's been developed that has been developed for Windows and Mac and Linux or any other operating system, you don't have the insurance that that application is going to run the same on all of those systems. So one of the things that's really powerful about functional programming languages in general is that the concept that the application that you're building and the concepts within that application are proved to work before they're available for people to use. So the way that you develop it to work is the way that it's going to work. But if you have other languages that are not functional languages, you don't have those assurances. So you might have an idea of how you want to develop something, but after it's been deployed and you have, hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that are using it, there are oftentimes bugs or exploits that you could not have known were going to be there until you had a lot of people using the application. So these functional programming languages allow you to, whatever it is that you're imagining, that you're developing, it has to follow the language construct, and within that construct, the idea that you're building is being proved out. So that when it's deployed and it's working, you know that it's going to work the way that you designed it to work.
So if I messed up, it could still go wrong, but it's my fault, not the code's fault.
Well, it probably would be very difficult for you to mess up. That's kind of the whole point.
That's the beautiful thing. I was playing with Plutus Playground, and it's incredible. You can write from your web browser, write some code, compile it, and then test it right there in your browser. Mm-hmm. You say, hey, if I've got 3 people with 3 wallets, here's how much is in each wallet. Here's the functions I wrote. Let's watch them happen. And it's such a brilliant user experience. Not only do you get to see the transactions happen, you get to visualize what's happening on the chain. And I have such high hopes for people taking a look at what their code does and saying, oh, I understand blockchains in a different way now because I see what these interactions did to it. So if we can play with that soon all together in real time, that could be really fun.
Security guarantees. Sorry to cut you, Tashoma. I just want to say, the security guarantees you get with Haskell and Plutus, it's not only saying, this is what my contract or my DApp or my smart contracts will do. It's being able to say definitively, this is exactly what they also won't do, right? You don't get that with Ethereum because of the, recursive types and the, sorry, not the recursive types, but the loops that you can get in some of these contracts that it might not even be a bug, but just the ability to exploit some of the features that come out of the box with Solidity actually make it really dangerous when you're talking about financial applications that need to be super deterministic, right? And unchanging over time, right? I think that concept really only applies in the functional programming world. And I think that's why, IOHK was so adamant about using Haskell. Like when you think about it, and Charles talks about this all the time, like probably would have had smart contracts by now if we deployed them in F#, right? Which is another type of functional programming language. Probably would have had them if we deployed it in Scala, right? or Rust or any of these other languages, right? But the guarantees that you get out of the box, you know, that make, you know, governments say, we're going to deploy our stock market on Cardano rails. We're going to deploy our social system, you know, on Cardano rails. You just don't get that with these other networks, and you never will, right? Because the research and development that goes into that, having the founder of Haskell on your team, you know, building Plutus for the last 3 years, no other platform can say that they have that, right? And there's a lot of kind of foundational security that you get out of the box with that method that I think that, you know, like James said, it's kind of like, you know, you don't have it and then one day you do and it changes everything, right? And I mean for crypto as a landscape, like I truly do think Plutus and Marlowe, they really, if the game is right here right now, Plutus and Marlowe take it all the way up here, and it's for everyone to use, right? It's not just for Cardano people. Like we'll see Litecoin and Bitcoin start using the voting, you know, and the governance features that come out of the box with Cardano. We will see that day come. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
All right, guys, we're going to have to wrap up. We've hit the 45-minute mark.
Just a little over. Not bad. Not bad.
But I think we should definitely continue this conversation. Maybe next week we can do a demo of the Marley Playground. Because to be honest, I'm still not quite up to date with it. I've watched the intro video and I kind of get it. But in terms of actually using it,
yeah,
I'm not a developer, so it's still
we'll be right in the middle of the Fund 1 voting round for Project Catalyst, so we can share some dispatches on that and how the final proposals turned out. Still got to get back to Mesh Network sometime too.
Yo, yeah, and we actually found we actually made some headway in terms of research in the Mesh Network. We can probably just discuss that next week also. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, for our listeners, I just want to remind you that if you already have some Cardano, I suggest you go into the Daedalus wallet, check out Joshua's staking pool, the Zoe pool, and stake with Joshua.
ZOE.
Yeah, exactly.
ZOE, ZOE, what it?
ZOE, right? DOA, ZOE. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been staking with Josh for the past week and a bit now, and I've already got paid. So yeah, good for us.
I already got paid.
Right, cool.
That's awesome.
All right, everybody, take care.
Bye.